Okay, I think we are live. Hey, George, how's it going?
Perfect. Hey, Dan, how are
Epis
you? It's going pretty good over
Episode
here, but
250.
250. Are you
That's a lot.
kidding?
That's a lot of
Really?
live at Epiphan. And if you
Oh,
want to go back through the archive, there is a playlist on this YouTube channel, and you can see all 250 episodes of this show right there on YouTube.
yeah. I feel like we need to do the old school, funny TV sitcom throwback
Right?
episode clip shows, and it's 250. It's a lot. It doesn't feel like that many, but that's it'd be interesting. Maybe a bit
A couple
cringy to
more,
go back all the way to the
couple more
beginning.
beard hairs, a couple more gray hairs
Couple
too,
more.
maybe.
Couple more.
A lot
Yeah.
of learning
Yeah.
about video technology. That's for sure. I've learned a lot from this show.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Well, and nearly 3 years of those 250 episodes has been dealing with pandemic stuff, which has driven us to create new methods of doing things. We've iterated, I don't know how many times in the past couple of years to try to sort out what's a mix of quality and ease and, all those things, which actually kind of led to what today's topic is all about, is really the kind of five best ways or good tools to use for remote production. And Dan, you're an expert in this, especially recently. You were
bootstrap
literally up at
expert.
all
Yeah.
hours of the night, yeah, doing remote production for what we did out of ISE in Barcelona. So that was the other reason we wanted to go through this, is we learned a ton from that. And of course, we're all about sharing what we've learned and what we screwed up and how we can always do better. So we're going to dive right into that. But of course, welcome everyone. As Dan said, 250 episode of Live at Epiphan, which is fantastic. Remote production.
Yes.
This is what everyone's talking about. You and I were talking about it in Slack earlier today. There's 1,000 different ways of doing this. Everyone has their own interpretation, including us. And we believe we found the best one. So we're going to kind of share some of those things. Um, Lots of things can go wrong. Participant wrangling, herding cats, that's the true, whether it's remote or in person. Like, that's never going away, I don't think. Is it harder remote though?
Well, I think the big challenge with remote has in some ways been communication, and how do you set up that back channel to create that communication path between the producer and the guest and the crew behind the scenes, or maybe on premise versus someone connecting from their home office or from something like a Microsoft Teams room in an office space. How do you
Right.
merge all of these sources into a single production? And sometimes you might want to do that over oceans or across great distances. And there's been a lot of challenges in making that a reality in the past, I should say. And now it's getting a lot easier thanks to some of the
Right.
things that are happening with the Epiphan media engine. So it's just pretty cool, the capabilities that we have now, and it's how we're operating this show today. As simple as this show may be, with
Yeah.
just the two of us, we now have the ability to bring in guests from anywhere with no latency, well, very little latency, good
Yeah.
quality media playback. We've got motion backgrounds, graphics, you name it. Whatever you want to throw at your production, it's possible to merge all of that regardless of location. So um, that's what.
Right. And so you mentioned some of the other things. We obviously, when you have all these different, more sophisticated, even simple but more sophisticated productions, we're involving switching between customized layouts and scenes. We're doing the titles, like you mentioned, everything's separated. You know, Ideally, in the olden times, 4 years ago, you would have a whole team
Mm,
to do this. But today, more and more, it's becoming kind of that one person production show in a lot of cases. And that's exactly what you were tasked with at ISE. So maybe let's talk through exactly what you did at ISE to deliver what is honestly amazing content from a trade show floor, which is has its own challenges aside from remote production.
yeah, it was pretty cool for Epiphan because Epiphan was able to provide basically to the people of ISE and the guests a fully operating studio to create content. And
Right.
we had many people, including the president of ISE, Michael Blackburn, coming through our studio to create content, and some great journalists. And some of the journalists that created content in our booth were thousands of miles away in Dallas, Texas, distance from Barcelona, and be able to interview people in real time. So from the show floor, which is just like super cool. For our purposes, we did a launch event where we had something like 13 cameras. We had field reporters with their handheld devices to create video. We had people, seated in a sort of press junket style mini studio right in the Epiphan booth. And from my sort of crow's nest back here in Ottawa, Canada, I was able to operate all of that seamlessly. And I've got a little bit of a behind the scenes here for you. You see, there is a time zone difference. So this was early in the morning.
3 a.m. or something like that.
Coffee keeping me up here. But I basically sat at my desk here at home, and I was able to operate a studio in Barcelona on a trade show floor with reasonably limited internet access, and able to operate that remotely from my home office without any latency getting in the way. So super powerful that we're able to accomplish that. And it was just really fun. And honestly, from my perspective as a producer, it really did feel like I was there, because I don't know if you can see the left side of my screen a bit. I've got like 13 layouts where I can see PTZ cameras, multiple cameras in the studio, field reporters. So with all of that booted up, I kind of felt like I was in the command center of like Batman's lair or something. It was pretty awesome.
Well, I mean, the one thing you usually don't see in a production room or in the Batcave is your salt lamp, keeping things nice and crisp. That's the comforts of home, right? But all jokes aside, it's one of the beauties of remote production, and the fact that you can do it from home. It means you have better coffee if you're into that sort of thing, like I am. You can have your salt lamp or lava lamp or whatever sort of other
not to
stuff
mention
you're into that helps you just chill.
Saving the time and expense of traveling abroad to do what can be done remotely very easily. I do have a bit of a diagram here just to show you how we did it. So this will kind of map it out a bit, and let me zoom this, try to get the crop looking okay. So you see, we had 3 final stream destinations. What you'll see at the top of that image, we wanted to go to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we mixed the show entirely in the cloud using Epiphan Unify. The easy way to understand what Unify is, it's a cloud-based production tool, and that could be any tool that you want to use. There's a lot of different solutions out there, but the key is that it's hosted in the cloud. And what that means is, we're no longer bound by the latency of internet connection between my home in Canada and the studio in Barcelona. It really eliminates that sort of barrier. And then from there, we have other sources. So you see in the center box, we've got a studio in the show floor at IC, and then we have 2 field reporters. We had George and Julian both coming in right over their phones using Microsoft Teams to connect themselves into the production. Likewise, we had Brody joining us from Microsoft in Toronto, Canada. So he was able to join the production from using Microsoft Teams as well. And then myself, I kind of injected myself as a cameo in the production as well. So all of these sources, everyone sort of unified through a video conferencing tool, which is kind of cool, because this is where we're seeing the sort of intersect between video conferencing and broadcast, which is, I'm sure we'll get into that a bit later in the conversation.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's the perfect place to, we look at that, and it seems simple on that type of a diagram, but and you mentioned some of the things that are necessary there, but let's try to break those down into the 5 components, right? So the first one, you mentioned in there a few things, one of them being, remote capable, SRT capable hardware encoders are probably one of the best places to start. Now, in your case, that's represented by Epiphan Unify as a cloud-based production tool that is SRT capable. But there's other possibilities out there. The other thing we've done, although at ISE you guys are using Teams from your mobile rigs for people on the floor, you and I have also done it with phones literally on the road on motorcycles using the Larix app, which is another great SRT capable app for your phone. I use it all the time for that, and it's great. It's
Yeah, it's a great,
pretty easy
it's really
to use.
easy. Yeah, simple. Android and iOS, Lyrics Broadcaster. If you need to send SRT from your phone, that's the way we do it. It's actually very
well, and if you have a newer phone, a newer hardware phone, you can even use H.265, right? So it's like cut your bit rate down,
and it's even free.
You can go on with Lyrics forever, and we have in previous shows. You can go back to check that out. But it's a great option to create a mobile rig. So, okay, we have all these sources.
Yes.
Right? But you're a remote producer. How do you switch? How do you control all of this?
Yeah.
Aside from having 10 arms and 1,000 monitors.
Yeah. So one of the ways to simplify your control is to actually get some control devices on your desk. Something like a Stream Deck. Stream Deck, the thing that we love about it is that it's very intuitive to set it up. You can set all of your, buttons. Somebody did make a Pearl plugin for Stream Deck, so you can actually, if you're on the same network as your Pearl, or if you can connect to it by a VPN, you can control Pearl switching, record, start, stop streaming right from a Stream Deck. You could also set this up to cue and trigger your graphics, or start, stop your records or your ISO records. Really, like, kind of the creativity of how you use this device is the only limiting factor, because it's just a productivity enhancer. And one of the things that I think you might overlook with something like a Stream Deck is that the buttons can react to states. So for instance, an on-off switch, like the button is red, we're recording. The button is green, like, you can set that kind of level of feedback into your buttons as well. And it just becomes a very versatile device to help, manage operating a live production.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think the Stream Deck has kind of become ubiquitous in the video production space, the streaming space. I mean, they even released a plugin that's directly for Microsoft Teams out there now, so that you can just control your Teams meeting from those buttons instead of having to find menus and stuff. So, I think Stream Deck has very quickly become one of those tools that anyone who has a computer should have. It's almost like that has become just as useful as your mouse and keyboard in 2022 and 2023. So it makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, for sure. And not just for streaming, just productivity. Like, I've got one here on my desk. I set my, some of my bookmarks up for, because I'm doing a lot of stuff in the cloud now, I can just set bookmarks in my web browser to navigate more easily. I have a little thing that shows my system load here, so I know, like, if I'm doing a bunch of encodes, I can see my GPU usage and understand how many encodes I can handle at a time. So, yeah, just a million. But
I've seen people, the Photoshop people, the Adobe Premiere people set up all kinds of macros and things like that on those. To just, again, productivity can be amazing across the board, which is great. We did do a video a while ago about how to use a Stream Deck with Pearl, so check that out. It's in the archive. We'll definitely try to link it here in chat. But that's a great example. But there's many other ways. So the other thing you mentioned earlier was titling. First, how important is titling, period, when it comes to content creation? But how do you do that remotely? Like, I think we're all used to this idea of someone sitting in this fancy television production studio throwing T-bars around and making sure the ticker's right and all those things. Like, how do we do that from the other side of the world in the cloud?
What's kind of interesting, and I was chatting with one of our colleagues, JC, about this morning, is like sort of changing the mindset of like what a production mix is. It's almost like you're creating layers in Photoshop now, because you can have contribution layers from a lot of different locations. And when you're doing things in the cloud, it's like you can almost just like layer on more and more to be able to, take in graphic sources from wherever you want, really. So I almost think of it as like this production mix is a program, but we can layer on graphics on top of that, and using whatever system we want for those graphics layers. So, some of the ones that we know and love here at Epiphan are Flowix, Singular Live. Singular has a new sort of easy mode tool called Uno. And I can show some of that here. I mean, I've got Flowix open right now, and this was the tool we used for our ISE program. So, you know, this is where I compose my graphics, and we were just creating some simple like lower thirds, name titles, things like that. And then what I can do is right up here at the top, I actually have a controller that I can open to, you know, pair that up to my Stream Deck. And when I'm ready to title someone, I just press the button on my Stream Deck. I see that's it. So this is actually outputting these graphics layers to a web URL. So let me just see how we do that here. If I open this controller, I can open the output. There's nothing to see here because this is basically a blank output right now. But this URL becomes my graphics source in my production mix. So all I have to do is copy and paste that URL into my production mixing tool, and boom, I've got a layer of graphics that I can do kind of whatever I want with. So,
and in that case, we were using Epiphan Unify, which supports a web source like that. So that made it really, really easy. Now, of course, that's cloud-based stuff. I've talked to customers who do things a little more locally, and they might do it out of other applications that would leverage NDI on the network over into something like Perl 2 that can support NDI. You know, so there's other options, but the cloud makes it even easier, and then you don't even have to run that software on a local machine. It's just.
I have a question for you, George. So we have NDI HX coming to Perl Mini this week, very soon.
Monday.
Okay. So do you think, so first of all, that's awesome that we're going to have NDI on Perl Mini because it's never had that before, right? So that's correct. That's a huge new input type that you can have on your Perl Mini. Is there a way to do graphics over NDI HX? Like, would NDI HX work for graphics?
Unfortunately, not currently, and that's because HX doesn't support transparency. It doesn't support alpha the way full bandwidth NDI does, and the way, as you showed, these web-based graphics, right? They're, if you think about transparency in like a PNG image or something, right? That's the way the web graphics are kind of doing it. But same idea. There's an alpha channel that's invisible, right? And unfortunately, under current NDI standard, NDI 5 is what we're going to be rolling out in that firmware update. HX doesn't yet support alpha. I've heard rumors that at some point in the future, NDI would like to add alpha support to HX, but who knows when they might do that. Because it's compressed, like HX being compressed means it's a little harder, where full bandwidth NDI is kind of its own thing. They can do a little bit more production quality there. So unfortunately, no, not yet. But if anything, you know, that just lends itself more to the potential of, you know, cloud-based, web page-based titling software down the road as well. Now, there's one more that, and Dan, I don't know if you've had a chance to play with this. I know our colleague Adam Palmer did, and he does a lot of our production, you know, sometimes for this show and webinars and things like that. He tested one from our friend John at the channel Here to Record, who's joined us along with other creators like Photo Joseph in past events. But he worked with one that's called GFX Live, and it's, my impression is that it seems like it's essentially, you know, you mentioned that Singular Live has their easy mode one. It seems like to me that one's even more easy mode. Like that's maybe the best place to start for someone who maybe isn't a professional at these things, where going into Flowix or true full Singular is, you know, can be intimidating.
Yeah, this is new to me, GFX Live, but just browsing the web page here, it looks pretty intuitive. I know for me, I'm not looking for a super robust. I'm not looking to do, you know, necessarily, you know, sports broadcast scoreboards, instant replay, and, you know, full motion graphic transitions or anything like that. I'm just looking for the basics: titling, countdown timer, you know, little bug in the corner that says we're live with the time. For, you know, 80% of use cases, you know, that's enough. So
absolutely.
I think that's why I think it's cool that you've got like Uno and GFX Live and these tools that are becoming much more intuitive to do, you know, basic stuff, but do it really well and do it easily. And it's the difference of removing that barrier to entry for someone to just get, you know, the type of titles that can really increase the production value of what you're doing, but don't require to necessarily have like a, some kind of
going to school,
some kind of broadcast expert to be able to create it.
Yeah. No, and I think that's, exactly part of what I think is important and is bit of the story that we've been seeing over the past little while is like making all this stuff easier. Remote is part of that, but also, just being able to make sure that anybody has access to this, right? It's kind of that idea of that broadcast without barriers kind of mantra that we have here, is making sure that anybody can do it. And I think that's getting even easier. So the next one you mentioned earlier that Microsoft Teams came up a few times. Let's maybe talk about for a moment, how are we using Microsoft Teams to achieve that easy?
Yeah, well, bringing in your participants, your contributors, your guests into your production has always been a challenge because, we're not all in the same room anymore. We're spread out. So how do you do that? Well, the conveniences of video conferencing haven't really existed in the broadcast video world before.
To terrible results.
Yeah, you might have required a dedicated hardware. Now, dedicated hardware is great if that's your studio or your use case, but it may not always be possible to do that, and sometimes you just need to get someone in quickly and easily. And that's really what Epiphan Connect is all about. It allows you to extract your guests from a Microsoft Teams meeting and bring them directly into your production without any latency. So basically, you and I right now are on a Teams call, and we're talking to each other as if we're on a Teams call. Now, on the other side of things, we've got George Burchell sitting in his home, and he's extracting us from this Teams call and putting us into the show that everyone is watching on YouTube right now. And it's super easy for us because we're just here hanging out on a Teams call. We joined, through our web browser like ordinary or using the Microsoft Teams app. For George, it's super easy because he just, you can see the interface he's working with right here on this screen share. He can see who is on the Teams meeting. So there's Dan. He's on here lurking with his camera off right now so that he can hear us. The Microsoft Teams call becomes like a back channel where he can monitor our production in real time. He can
speak to us, which we can hear, but you can't.
Exactly. And then we've got Marta here too. She's our segment producer for this show. She's just hanging out in the background, and she's here to help if needed as well. So
in case I screw up the script as usual.
Exactly. And that happens a lot, George. That happens a lot. Yeah.
It does. It does, especially with me. No, but it's funny because, I think the greatest thing over the past few years of, like I mentioned earlier, all the crazy iterations we've tried in producing content remotely, this has by far probably been my favorite iteration as someone who I'm not a video producer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm that's an art form I don't have. But I do talk to cameras a lot. And, being able to say, I'm going to go do a video production, and literally the only work that I have to do heavy lifting wise is click a link to join a Teams meeting. It can't be easier than that, honestly. Previously, it was, let's make sure that I've got cameras running and splitting to different things and going into pearls and sending SRT, which is great and quality is incredible, but it adds an extra layer of complexity that you might not always have the luxury of doing. I moved back in the end of the summer, and I don't have anywhere to plug in a pearl on my desk anymore like I did in my old home office. So now I don't have to worry about that because I just click a link and join Teams. And that's beautiful. Plus, I'm not running 6 different applications to get the back channel comms from the producer. So that's also an amazing thing. I used to have 2 microphones running at the same time, like just to get into back channel plus production. It's so simplified having to do it through Connect. And it's really hard for me to emphasize anymore, like how incredible it is as a participant to just click.
I show you? I'll give you a 5-second demo here. Well, maybe a minute demo. So here in the Connect interface, I'm gonna be brave here. I can see that you're connected right now, George. Your latency is
Yeah.
125 milliseconds. So that's like little more than a tenth of a second of latency into our
Yeah.
production mix. And then if I open up this tab for you, I could stop your camera if I want. Let's try that right now. I'll just stop your camera and I'm going to restart your camera. I'll turn it back on. There we go. I can see that what I'm receiving from Microsoft Teams for your ISO. So I've got a 1080p, 30 FPS. Oh, we just lost down to 29 FPS. And then basically I can see what Epiphan Connect is sending to our production mixing tool. So it's kind of upscaling actually what Teams is giving us, and it's sending a 4 megabit stream into the production. Packets lost, we've got 0.14% packet loss since we started this, which was like an hour ago, so that's pretty solid. And yeah, well, 125 milliseconds latency. Just to sort of show how intuitive this is, I'm going to be brave here. I'm actually going to stop your stream, so say goodbye for a second, George. I promise I'll bring you right back.
Bye.
Okay, so we're going to stop George. Okay. Are you sure you want to? Okay, yes, we want to stop him. Now you see he's in our production mix. You're going to see he's gone now, awaiting connection. That's our SRT input in the production tool, in Epiphan Unify in this case we're using. So let's restart George. I'm going to click start. I can see the SRT input on the production side, George H. That's the guy, right? I have some options here. I'm going to choose full HD. Latency 125. We were using that before, so I'm just going to stick with that. And I am going to click start. And you'll see it connects very quickly. And within a moment, we should see George reappear in our production mix. He's back. There you are.
I'm back.
So a little bit of a live demo just to kind of show how intuitive it is to add sources from Microsoft Teams. It's really as easy as a couple button clicks.
Well, the other thing I'd add to that, Dan, is when we were talking about, all those cameras you had to deal with at ISE, all those different points, right? It also meant that, like, if you had multi-segment total production that you were doing, it meant that, like, when you were done with one presenter in their segment, you just turn them off and you never have to worry about a mistake. Start someone else who wasn't supposed to be talking yet, and you can really run one bigger production, being able to segment it for safety with just a couple of clicks like you just showed, which I think is, again, from a producer standpoint, I don't know how you make that any easier either, other than yanking cables, right?
Yeah, this is the easiest it's ever been for sure. I think it opens up a lot of possibilities to really level up your productions, to be able to create more interaction, to take it from what is typically like something like a static video conference experience and elevate it to a fully fledged hybrid video experience where there's participation and engagement.
The beginning of the pandemic, we saw so much of just screen scraping the ugly Zoom galleries and all that. It was disgusting. It was horrible. I still see it all the time. It doesn't feel professional. It doesn't look good. People don't pay attention. Elevating your production by any degree has value. And, I think this is an easy way to do it. So before we jump into number 5, I just wanted to address a couple people in chat who had some great questions. Media Service Agency said, we're about to buy a Pearl encoder. Hope to see you guys at NAB. Greetings from Mexico. We will be at NAB. You can check out, obviously, the map of exhibitors and find us. I don't remember exactly where we are at the moment off the top of my head, but we will be at NAB. We're going to have a similar thing going. We'll have a little mini studio in the booth. We'll have all the gear there to show you. And, of course, amazing Epiphan staff to chat with you about all that stuff. So if you're thinking of attending NAB, please come by, say hi, check us out, and chat about all things, Pearl, remote production, whatever's on your mind. We did have another question in here, which was a follow-up. We mentioned NDI coming to Pearl Mini. Question is, will NDI be added to Nano? Not at the moment, not in the near future, at least. I mean, we're always evaluating this stuff. A couple of years ago, I was honestly not that confident we'd ever be able to do it for Mini. But NDI 5 becoming more efficient changed that. So it's hard to say what the future will hold. If it's another situation where, NDI 7, I don't know, whatever number they slap on there, is all of a sudden, in a place where we could add it to something like Nano. Yeah, sure, why not? We're always evaluating those technologies and seeing the best way that we can add and enhance the Pearl products to really open up possibilities for people. That's kind of our objective. So number 5, Dan, we talked about cloud production. We talked about Epiphan Unify is what we use. And Unify is awesome, but it's not the only option out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of options for cloud video production. We've seen a lot of them spawn from sort of the remote conference period of time during the pandemic, where people needed a fast way to create some basic content using a web browser. And those are relying oftentimes on technologies like WebRTC, which is great for low latency, but quality, not so great. Customizability, not so great. There's not a lot of flexibility with those tools. They're very basic. But we're starting to see more and more, of a merge between the convenience of video conferencing and the quality of full broadcast video production. I mean, we're doing it here. This is on our show. We're using Epiphan Unify. And right now that you can check this out on the Epiphan website, epiphan.com/unify. There's a private preview you can sign up for. But really, if you're familiar with Pearl, this is taking all of the power of the Epiphan media engine that is sort of the basis for Pearl. And it's putting that in the cloud so that you can do all kinds of things, and it scales as well. So whether you're streaming or recording or mixing content, there's ways that you can set this up to do exactly what you need.
Yeah, like I said, scalability is the key. And for me, that's one of the big advantages of cloud-based production, is that, sure, it's based around, ingesting SRT streams. As we mentioned earlier, the good news about that is that there's so many possibilities for SRT sources now, whether it's Pearl Nanos, like our friend in chat mentioned earlier, whether it's PTZ cameras directly, whether it's a mix of both, software phones with the Larix app, like we mentioned, blend them all together and Unify. Fine. There's another one out there, not necessarily to plug the competition, if you will, but one I've played with myself, and that's Easy Live. It also will ingest SRT streams and let you do it. I would say it's a little more complicated the way they've implemented things, but they have a few other options that include WebRTC and some other things. And of course, as you mentioned, Dan, there's been a ton of WebRTC based ones like StreamYard and Restream offer. A lot of people like to use vMix Call, which is really more of a local thing anyways. And I've heard a lot of headaches around making sure that that's stable. So there's so many possibilities and more of them popping up every day. And I think the question isn't which one is best or which one is the one cloud to rule them all. It's more of like what's going to fit exactly what your needs are. Do you need straightforward efficiency and simplicity? I would argue that's Unify. Where if you are trying to do Mr. Hollywood, then there might be another tool out there. But it's there's great possibilities now in the cloud to be able to bring these things together.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. At NAB last year, we saw that there were a lot of companies.
The cloud on everybody's booth.
Yeah, everybody says cloud. It's a nice buzzword, but I can say with Epiphan Unify, it's not just a buzzword. It is reality that you can do all of this right now today. Yeah. And as more and more of the tools become interoperable with each other, whether it's SRT protocol, NDI protocol for local camera sources, whether it's bringing in graphics over a web URL, whether it's setting up a Stream Deck as a control interface, all of these tools are becoming interoperable in many cases. And that's what, our focus is here at Epiphan, is not a walled garden where everything must be Epiphan. And, we recognize that people have complex setups that are trying to do very specific things. Yeah. And I think our goal is more so flexibility and open architecture, so that, regardless of, what kind of sources you want to use, what protocols you want to use, there's a way to accomplish that with the Epiphan media engine. So,
For sure.
As more of that starts to blossom in the cloud, it just means that it's going to be that much easier for people to get their hands on it and to create great results.
Yeah, great point. Well, thanks, Dan, for sharing some of those things that we were covering during ISE. Just a little bit in some of the other Epiphan news out there. We recently, I guess just this week, really released this amazing case study that highlights, honestly, everything we've just talked about as well. And that's a case study from Microsoft, and this is incredible. This is an awesome case study. Dan, I know you were working on the video for this, and it's top notch. But basically, this is all about Microsoft using Epiphan Connect for hybrid events, and it's just absolutely incredible what they were able to do, and very humbling hearing from people at Microsoft how much it blew them away as well. So, I highly recommend going out and checking this out. We'll make sure the link's in chat. There's a whole video there, and share it with anyone that you know that is interested in this stuff. Right? This is not just the future. This is the now, and not a lot of people know that yet. And I think sharing information like this, sharing the experiences from companies like Microsoft and how it's changing the game of what they're doing is inspiring. So,
someone at Microsoft said this was like, being a part of this virtual event. They said it was the best virtual event they'd ever attended at Microsoft, and that it was like watching and being part of a TV show, which is a pretty cool piece of feedback. I think it's elevating what might have been just a boring conference call into a video experience, a total experience facilitated by video. And one of the really cool things is they were able to bring in Dr. Leroy Chow, who's sort of a friend of Epiphan, who's an astronaut, and to create a really compelling story and create a theme for the meeting as well. And it starts to open up a lot of creative possibilities when the tools are that much easier to use and more accessible. So
and as soon as you throw Leroy in there, inspiration is always guaranteed. So, that's a great piece as well, for sure. We also just published a great blog article. We'll throw that link in there as well. And that's all about choosing the right hardware encoder to use with Wowza. Wowza is an amazing CDN. They are incredibly flexible. Again, friends of Epiphan, people with Pearls use Wowza as their CDN and delivery platform all the time. And they're a founding member of the SRT Alliance. So, no worries about SRT being in there. They are a great place if you're looking for a high quality enterprise grade CDN that's going to manage and host all of your stream content and so on. This blog is awesome, written by our team, talking about the choices you need to look at in terms of when you have a great CDN. It always starts with a great encoder. So that's a great blog to kind of catch up on some of those things.
I love Wowza, by the way. Wowza is a CDN that actually ingests SRT. So that is super cool because you can have extremely low latency. If you're trying to do something that's like live engagement with an audience, how about 1 second of latency or less? Like that's amazing for a CDN to be able to accomplish that. So very, very powerful platform, Wowza. I love it.
And great folks over there in general. So it's can't complain about that. But I think that's where we're going to wrap it up, Dan. So thanks so much for jumping in the show today. Really appreciate it. It's kind of fun. Number 250 is you and I. I think I don't want to know the percentage of how many of these we've done. But it's a fair number, that's for sure. But always, it's a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and watching. If you have any questions about any of the stuff we just talked about, always jump on the website, use live chat to chat with the team, give us a call, drop us an email. We'd love to chat with you about maybe some of the difficulties or barriers you have that we can help tear down when it comes to your video productions, be they remote, hybrid, in person, whatever it is. Epiphan has the tools to help you and the knowledge to really guide along that way to make sure that it is the best experience, like Microsoft said. That's our objective. So look forward to hearing from you. Be followed to like, subscribe, share, all those social things. You guys know what to do. Click all the buttons in all the places. And we will see you next time.
So long,
Thanks.
George.
Bye.
Bye.